started so that we will post it to our wiki and make it available for those that may not have been able to make it today, or if you want to go back and recap it at a later date. Um, as I've done with other sessions, we're going to break this up into three different categories or three different sessions today. Trying to cover, as you can see on the screen, the basic. The first part will be just journal navigation. How do I find my test? How do I manage the test for my section or my area? What's been assigned to me? Things like that. The second thing we're going to look at is then the basics of actually putting results in the system. Navigating to a test, navigating to a given result, different statuses of those results, formats, comments, things like diff counters, macros, things that go along with the resulting itself. Then we'll touch on the worksheet functionality when it comes to how you can set that up for yourself, some of the personal settings there, the options for importing and exporting that, specifically around molecular and the plate layouts, journal attachments of worksheets or notes that you have, alerting and comments there. And then the final kind of session we'll have is on instrument interfacing, electronic messaging, and kind of an overall of kind of how messaging works. A little bit with Global Vet Link as an example of an incoming source of data, as well as auto uploading stuff. So we'll have the three sessions today um, focusing around actually resulting out tests and the management of cases in the system. So we'll start with general navigation. And I'm going to repeat some of this may be kind of repetitive, but again, we want to make sure that if you were just watching this video or this and attending this session, that you kind of understand the general navigation there, how to get in and out of the system. All right, so I'm gonna jump over here. So again, VetView, completely web-based, go to your URL, you'll have your credentials, you'll log in. And with your credentials, it also knows your preferences. So as you jump into the system, we come to what we call the home page here. And this is where the customization for you as a user starts, and you can add and remove from our home page here. Again, across the top here is general navigation. These are the main screens here. The last one being the navigation. Assuming it's at the end, you can move those around, but they have a general navigation window. So we're going to spend most of our time really in this section of the system today. Kind of how do I find my test? How do I find, for my area or my section, what's been assigned to me, things like that as well. Again, as we get into this, I want to kind of draw your attention to your name in the top right corner. That is what we call the user profile. So if you click on your name, you will get to a place where you can update some of your personal preferences, names, email addresses, if you want notifications sent out to you or not. But there's also some defaults here that will kind of play in today. So first being is the default lab section and workstation. So if you are someone who works specifically in, say, bacteriology or molecular or clinical pathology, and if you set the defaults here, that's going to then, as you go to different navigation screens, search screens, those will be defaulted in for you automatically. It does not prevent you from going anywhere. It's just, is it my default as I load up the screen? And we'll also notice as we go to certain search screens that you can also set setting or preferences at a search screen level as well. There's also a couple other options here that we'll talk about as we go through the system as well. I'll also remind you if you can also mute your mic if you're not asking a question, that way we can cut down on background noise in the recording as well. Other thing you can do here is also adjust your icon. So going back to navigation here, if you aren't using certain things now, by default, if you don't have privileges to something, it's going to be automatically hidden and not even available. So if you don't have accounting privileges, you may not even see that in your navigation bar, or you may not see it in your menu because we try to hide things that you don't have access to just so you're not getting dead buttons, right? So you click on something and just say, bonk, you can't get there. So we try to hide those things if they're not applicable to you. But you can also move these things around, drag and drop them. Again, however, kind of fits for what you find useful, what you find as your common workflows, those can be moved around by your own personal preferences there. As an administrator, you can set defaults for the users that are coming in, but we'll kind of talk about the general user today. So here's how you can kind of come in, adjust those settings. Don't forget to hit save. And when you hit save, you should notice immediately across the top there, those settings change. And every time you log in, it will remember those settings. The other thing you can do, talking about your home page here, is we have these things, we call them widgets. I stole this concept from a long time ago. Google used to have a home page and they called them widgets as well. But these are things that you can move around. It's per person, so each person can set up their own home page. And there's a little add button here. There's several different types of widgets we offer. And again, depending on what you're looking for, what your common activities are, you might find these more or less useful for you to set up on your home page. There's everything from assigned tests. So tests can be assigned to people. And so if you have tests that have been assigned to you, there's a whole widget to help you find those tests quickly. And then you can also jump off to it. So again, being in a web page, you'll notice the blue link or hypertext there is something you can click on and jump to that test. So I can jump there. Here's that test. I can put my results in it from there. The homepage is not meant to be really a working screen as much as just a quick links off to different things you want to. That view is also or click sensitive or context sensitive. So depending on what you click on, if I click on a test, you'll notice it goes to that accession, but that test is highlighted here. At the very bottom, there is a filter at the bottom, and this is something that does catch new users is that if I click on a test, it's going to automatically filter down to that single test. You know, there's only one test here, which there might be more. Now, the one I clicked on, it was not more than one test, but and I'll show you an example here of an example of where I jump to a particular case using, say, a test link or a pattern link. It's filtered down to that end. There's four tests on this particular session, but you're only seeing two over here, and that's because it is filtered. So if you want to see the whole case, make sure you hit reset. You'll pull in all of the tests on that particular session there, which in this case, there's four of them. So that's true in all the different places. So if you click on an accession number, it won't filter it because you clicked on the accession, not a given test, and so it'll show you everything about that accession. So just be conscious of if you don't see what you're looking for, it may be filtered at the bottom, depending on, again, what you click on, the accession number versus a test a link or a specimen link in the system. You've got a sign. There's also there are different things from if you're answering phone calls and you want to know what costs are or things like that. There is a catalog search where you can put in keywords and find entries. Again, kind of referring back to what we talked about last week about setting up your catalog, making things orderable, what it costs, things like that. Again, that's just another widget you can have. As far as managing caseloads, another one that you might find useful is I think I've already got it added down here. So is you've got a session search again where you can put in a session number, but there's also let's see, test search here. Now in the test search one, it opens blank, and you'll notice there's a little cog wheel we call it here. A little, it's an options wheel. You can click on that, and here allows you to pick which section, and you can go as far down the tree if you want to, lab section and workstation test that you want to monitor. So if you are in, say, bacteriology and you want to monitor all the bacteriology, you can just stop there and it's going to show you every working test currently in bacteriology. Now, if I wanted to go further down the tree, I could do that. Say I'm only in looking at, let's say, clinical pathology and hematology, looking for stuff coming off the differentials that I need to do potentially there from the Bear Avia. You could do that and it would show tests that are working in that area. I don't have any currently in mind. But you can also add multiples here. So maybe you're watching a couple different particular test codes or different areas in the system that you wanted to add. You can add multiples there and it'll watch both of those in the system. I forgot to hit add there. I hit save instead. So let's see, metrology. Uh, Aerobic add. So you can add many of these as you want. Again, just another way to kind of have a quick jump off. And by default, it's going to show anything working in the system. So again, there's a lot of options there as far as what you find useful in the system, what you may want to jump off to. Now, another thing I'll draw your attention to is up here in the top right corner is we call it the Go button or the Go quick search. And in this little dialog box, it says a session number up there, but really it can be any of our barcodes in VetView. It could be the session number itself. It can be a specimen barcode. It can be what we call like a pattern barcode that you might put on, say, a sensitivity plate, any of those in the system. And again, if you do have, I'm going to have, if you had a barcode readers, this is a good place to then be able to just scan that barcode in, jump to it. So in that case, I put in a session number in. Maybe I had a specimen barcode. I want to just throw that in there, hit the scan button, jump right to that spread. Again, it's also filtered down to that single specimen. So that's very useful if you were trying to get to a single, say you have a bunch of patterns or a bunch of specimens on a given test, it's also useful. So this would be a pattern icon or label we call it for a particular pattern here, sensitivity pattern that I wanted to jump to. And again, it's filtered down to that. So if I reset, you'll actually see there's three different isolate patterns here. Again, it's filtered down to that. So in the go button at the top or the quick search at the top, you can put any of the barcode identifiers in the system. And on that note, we really recommend that if you don't already do it, is to label every sample with a barcode. When you start looking at automation to equipment, quick searching it, specimen tracking, all the different activities that you're going to want to do either currently or moving forward, a lot of that revolves around having the unique identifiers on every specimen or session paperwork or patterns for plates and things like that. The system can really help you out and help quickly identify things if you have those already printed. And again, as we mentioned last time, you can either have those auto printed, you can also print it at any point. We offer, like I said, we offer really barcodes at every level. The most common ones are going to be the accession label. Typically, people put that on their paperwork. Your specimen labels, you're going to put that on every single unique specimen. And then your pattern labels, which are very commonly if you're going to have multiple plates on a case that you have in, say, an incubator or something like that, those are always very useful. But we do have them at every level of the accession all the way down. And this can be customized as you need by your lab. And again, you can print those in bulk. So if you had a bunch of them, you can print them all. It's also in the right click menu here. You can just say, I want to print this specimen label, quickly get to it there. Or maybe I want to click on my pattern and say print my pattern label, get to those. And these are some generic labels that we provide you. Obviously, your lab will need to customize those for whatever paper size and format you like to use in your lab. But we really do recommend that you kind of start moving towards that direction if you're not already doing that. Of using a unique specimen barcode is really the key one when you start looking at interfacing. And so we'll talk about that in the last session. Then we'll talk about interfacing, how that comes into play. All right. And then let's see. So now let's jump into actually finding cases. So we talked about general navigation, how to move around in the system. Again, being web-based. Um, when you go to one of our search screens here, uh, remember being a hyperlink system. Let me take this range off here. Search. And you can also use the tabs across. So if you're on a search screen and you want to look at something and you're going to be looking at lots of different items there, you kind of want to jump in and out of cases to kind of see what's what. I also recommend that you use the control click. I find that very useful. I like to point that out. You hold the control key down while you're clicking on one of the links. It's going to open it up in a tab here. And that allows you to have multiple, sessions open, potentially multiple test result areas open that you can handle that. You can have as many tabs open as you want, moving those around. If you have multiple monitors, you can actually move it off to another monitor there. All that works just fine with that view, giving you the ability to have multiple things open at the same time. That's very useful also if people come in and want to ask you a question and you're in the middle of something. Well, you can just leave that where it is, control click on the home button, go back and do my search or wherever I want to do. So control clicking. You can also right click and say open in a new tab. Those are just things built into the web browser itself, but we take advantage of that to make it easy for you to have multiple things running or want to look into things quickly in the system. It also makes it where if you have done, set up a particular search, you're not having to research, have it search again and again and again, which is, can be slow and tedious if you're having to do that. So again, control clicking is something I always like to highlight there when moving in and out of a system. Sorry, so let's talk about the basis of the accession. We'll get into more accession creation on Wednesday, but today I want to focus on just finding tests and how to move in and out of the test. But one of the things is statuses is important when thinking about a session searching or test searching. So the session itself has a status: new, working, review, finalized, canceled, addended. New represents that the session is still being built in, say, receiving, and it's not going to show up in your test search area. So test search being kind of where you can find all of the working tests that need to be finalized, or results added to it. But new for the accession represents that the accession is still in that kind of beginning state, still being built out. It's not technically been delivered or released to the lab to be worked on. Working is your primary status for things that are in process. Review is specifically when all the tests are completed, but the case coordinator has not finalized the session, sending the final report out to a client. So the review is kind of the last step there. If there's a case coordinator that kind of puts it in a hold, waiting for someone to review the case and then release it out. Obviously, finalized and addended are your two final statuses there. It automatically knows that if you finalize it once and then reopen it and then finalize it a second time, it will automatically go to addended status. It's not something you have to specifically say, make this addended or not. It does that automatically. And then obviously canceled is, you canceled the session there. But that's important if you start looking around because the test itself has statuses too. So if I go into a case here, you might notice that the accession is in working status. So at the top up here is the accession information, right? The session header, who it's for, when did it come in, accession number. But this is your accession status at the top. Now each test, so this one has several different tests we were using as a test case from our previous session. The little dot in the front there, we try to match the color scheme. So gray means it's finalized. If there's a little tooltip that rolls over as well, let me zoom in so maybe you can see that from the back of the room. And I'm gonna swap these here. Jump over here. Um, so gray being finalized status, and again, if you hover your mouse over it, you'll get a tooltip telling you that. Red being working. So tests don't have as many statuses. They're just either working or finalized. There is a new status as well. Again, that's representing when it's in the kind of a session receiving area. Um, but those are the basic statuses there. There's not a review status for a test. It's just either working or finalized or canceled. Sorry, there, because there is canceled as well. But again, if it's in a working status, then your result areas are open. It's accepting results there. If it is finalized, you will notice it will be in a read-only status, so that you don't accidentally change something. It also gives you a visual indicator that it is finalized out as well. So that's important as well, that the session may be working, but the test itself may be finalized. And when you send preliminary reports out, we only show things that are in a preliminary status or a finalized status. We do not show working results. And so when in a second we get in the result entry, there is a status at the result itself because of the preliminary that I'll show you in a minute. But just know that from a test and a session, those are different statuses, and that will become important when you are sending out preliminaries potentially, and or people are pulling their own reports from the portal. That's a growing population of people who are using the portal to get their reports. So it's also, you need to be conscious of that. Just because you didn't hit the send button doesn't mean they aren't seeing that result potentially. All right. So a session search, kind of jump back in the search screen here. We have the basic options across the top up here. When did you receive it? Session number, client. Um, a lot of these fields, if it's a drop-down list, it's going to ask you, and we try to do what we call smart searching. So what I mean by that is you don't have to know exactly the full name, how it was spelled. So if I was looking for a particular client, let's say I mentioned earlier, companion animal hospital, common name, you can actually just start putting in partial text there. Sorry, my cursor got off. Companion animal hospital. And again, what I mean by smart searching is it's finding it even though it kind of wildcards it out for you automatically. So it finds it wherever it is in the name. That's true for clients, tests, any of those things that you're looking through in the system. And we also try in some places we try to give you more information. If they, what section it might be in, or in this case for a client, what's their address, what's their fax numbers, emails, things like that, so you can quickly find them as well. Some of the screens, specifically like session screen, has a more fields concept as well. So more fields is, again, you can open it up, and if you're looking specifically for a particular patient, case number, like if they gave you a reference case number that you typed in, you can look for those as well in the more search options there. There's also, as I mentioned earlier, there is defaults that you can set. So if you are commonly wanting to go to a search screen like this session search, we'll go to test search here in a minute, um, which allows you to, maybe you only want to see new work. So you want to see everything from the last, that's why I have mine set here is the last day. And you can say, and you do business day. So if you're trying to find things that are current, but you don't want to go backwards, there's different things that you can set. And this is also where you can set if you're using multiple labs, things like that. So let me jump over to test search. So test search is the primary one when you talk about section level, management, right? So bacteriology, molecular. This is the main screen that you will find that we use for that. It also has different functions we'll go into about batching things up or assigning work out to people. This is the screen that you're going to spend most of your time then in, I would say, in the section when it comes to managing your test. There's a lot more options here just because of that reason. You might want to look for things again. You can find old stuff as well here. The default is working only, but you can say maybe it was a case you're looking for from a week ago that was finalized. You can use this as a way to look back. You can also use it to get basic statistics of when things were done or not in the system. Um, but the same thing, you can do trailing range. You can do a specific range of time. By default, when you search in here, it's going to list things as oldest to newest. So let's say I am doing bacteriology again, and I do a search here. It's going to find every test. I've got working. Bacteriology is the section here. It's going to find every test that's currently working in bacteriology. Tell you at the bottom there's 205 of those. And again, it's going to list it by default, oldest to newest, age being the days from receiving to current, going downward. You can also search and sort by other attributes as well if you want to in the system. But again, the default is just the oldest to newest, again, because that's typically how you might be processing things, is getting the things that have been here longer closed out and moved on. Um, so again, basic search up here. Again, like I said, you can set your default. So again, if you are, say you're looking in molecular, and that's where you kind of live, you can go ahead and set that as your default. And what that'll do then is as soon as you log in, click test search, it's going to have that defaulted for you and run the query for you. So it's a quick way to get there, narrow down to it for you in the system. Now, when it comes to batching up work, and assigning work out. There's three basic mechanisms we have in the system for assigning or batching work to people. The first one is the actually physically assigning the test to a person. So every test can be assigned to a single person who's going to be the responsible for it. That can be either technician, that could be a pathologist, it could be a resident. However you want to use that, you can assign people out to the test itself. And it's as easy as just coming here, running your query. Maybe you want to find everything that's currently unassigned. So we give you the option to say unassigned test, and you can run and find everything that's unassigned in an area, select those and say, yep, I'm going to take those for myself. And or you can, by default, will have your name there, but you can assign if you're, say, a section manager and you're divvying out the work, you can pick someone else and actually, put their name on it, assign it to them, and it will show up in their list when they come in. That's also the other use here is that say I want to come in and I'm basically someone else is divvying out the work. I want to quickly find everything assigned to me. I can put my name here as part of my search criteria and now find everything that's been assigned to me in the system. You can also assign things from the accession screen itself. So back here on the accession screen, if I just double click on the test itself, I can change the assigned to person here from the accession directly as well. So that can be done at any stage in the system. You can assign those tests to people, take their name off, put someone else's name on if you want to throughout the system. So that's one of the primary ways of divvying out work, you would say, or having people grab things and manage that themselves throughout the lab. Now, the other two ways is more of a batching mechanism. I'm going to batch things up, put them on a worksheet, or we call a working list. I'm going to start with working list. It is a true batching mechanism. The idea behind this, it's been used historically with tests that typically you have to find, result them out individually. So I like to use ClinPath. ClinPath has a lot of these in there. So let's say I'm in ClinPath and I'm working in the urinalysis area. I'm going to be doing dipstick, test on all the urinalysis, but I want to batch them up and let people know that I grabbed this batch of urinalysis in the system. I currently only have two in here. One of them is already assigned, one is not. You can actually do the same thing. You can say, give me those that are not assigned to a list currently. I can select all of those, generate a working list out of it. A working list has a name, an automatic name association with it. So if there was a bunch of these here, you could either leave the default date and time there, or I could say it's, Jeff's, batch number or whatever. You can kind of put whatever you wanted to put in here. It's just a name to help you identify it later if you were coming back to it. But again, now I have it batched up. And that's another way of kind of showing that out, is that you can then, group up those tests, batch them off. So that's very useful if you do have like a receiving window, say in CleanPath here, and I'm going to go to the window, grab those out, put them on my batch list. And then what you can do from there is the batch list is now something that can be used from we call the working list screen. So there's actually a screen that goes along with that that then allows me. So if I click on the link here, or I can just navigate directly to it, now all the analysis that I grabbed in that batch is in this list on the right hand side over here. And idea here is that I can click on that. It shows me the result area. I don't have to navigate in and out of every session. I would just get the list of those over here where I could then, work on it, doing my dipstick on here, fill in my results. So whatever the answers might be. Once I'm done, I can save those results. I can finalize the test from here. And when I finalize the test, it will mark it as final and then it falls off my list. So it's a way of grabbing up a batch of tests, working through those tests, finalizing each one of those as I do. Again, I like it for tests that you have to do individually anyways. Your analysis dipsticks, diffs, things that you're going to have to kind of work through one by one anyways. Just your way to batch it up. Now, this screen in general, you can use the batch list where you can create those batches and find those batches here in the system, whatever they may be. But you can also use this screen just as a search screen itself. So let's say I'm the only one working in a given area. So let's say I want to look in, again, ClinPath. I'm working in chemistries. I can just do it as a simple search. I don't have to make the batch if I don't want to. If I'm the only one and I'm just going to be working down the list and I want it to automatically add new ones in, I can just do it this way. I can even set that as my default. Again, as soon as I navigate to that screen, my defaults will be set. It'll run the query for me. Oh, I'm sorry, I went to the Sorry, I went to the wrong place. Anyways, and have it there for me as my defaults that I can jump right into again, selecting them, filling in the results, closing it, so on and so on. Um, so this screen can be used as just a search and work through. You can create the batches and come here and result them out. But again, this screen's designed more around still resulting it one by one, but I'm using it as a batching mechanism. Now, in contrast to that is the worksheet itself. The worksheet screen, and I like this one more for things that are done in batches, right? So PCRs or yeah, molecular or FAs, SNs, things that you're going to be running in batches anyways, especially on plates or through interfaces, things like that. So again, you can come in here, do your search. I've got a bunch of those. Now, a lot of times with worksheets, I feel like it works best if it's the same test code throughout. Now, it doesn't have to be, but if they're all the same test code, so a lot of times what I would do is actually drive down or select down and say, I'm going to do all of the canine respiratory panels today. I'm going to search for those. I'm going to see that there are 500. This is a common one I like to use in my demos. So I've got a bunch of them here. You can actually use this number here and say, I want to find, say, 90 of those, search for that, select all 90 and say, generate a worksheet out there. And you can say only this page that I selected or all that I've queued up. Obviously, I don't want all 500 and something of them. I'll just take this page, save that. You've got a name you can associate to as well. But what that does now is in the worksheet view, once you batch them up using the worksheet, it now gives you an action editing area where you can edit the specimen or the test results in a true worksheet style, your Google spreadsheet, Excel type style of data entry here. And the few options, the things that are nice about this is because you're typically doing a batch, we also give you options for, say, like right clicking and filling in. So, like if you were filling in one of them that I haven't done yet, so let me scroll over here. Say I'm doing this particular coronavirus PCR. if I'm not using interface, I'm manually assigning it. What you can actually do is in here is say, okay, that one's negative, and I want to paste that to all of them and have it just paste down the row for you. Or if you're, that's actually very useful also when you're signing off on something. Maybe I'm going to sign my name, paste to all, put my result date in there, paste to all. You can also use the little select icon here to say maybe this one, and this one are actually positive. So I can say those are positive ones are not detected or detected, and then say paste to selected. So there's a lot of options there that you can do to kind of result in mass and then also save that. Now this screen also gives you the way to customize what you see on the left-hand side here. So the left-hand side is the static information to help you identify which specimen test you're working on. You can actually collapse that down, expand that back out. Um, but what that's useful for is that you can then, let me just reload here. When you are, if you don't want to see certain information and maybe you do have a large test that you're working on like this, you can actually remove columns or add columns or resort that. Now that's a personal preference. So you can come in here if you don't, again, you don't use specimen labels, it's not important to you, you can remove that column, have it go away. Again, you'll remember that. Now, don't forget to save those options there, because again, if you just manipulate it and then leave, it was just a temporary change. If you save that as your default, then the next time you pull up your worksheet, that those set of columns will be shifted there for you as well. You can also use this as since it is a matching mechanism, both the work list and the worksheet screen, you can then also print those out. And you can have multiple types of worksheets, printouts in the system as well. So if you have actual worksheets for scribbling on and doing prep work, you can do those as well. Again, you can have as many different reports in the system as overrides as you want. So it's very useful there. And depending on what you're trying to do with it, what kind of tests they are, what you may find useful. But you can also there from the worksheet screen, you can also then mass finalize or set things to preliminary statuses as well. So this is another mechanism, another value of the worksheet is that you can do things again in mass. So I can just put all my results in, review it all, and then finalize the entire worksheet, or just the selected ones there as well. So that's very useful when you're trying to do, again, big, large cases, especially like PCRs or FAs, SNs, things like that, where again, you're typically running on interfaces too. And I will touch specifically on plates in the next section, and some of the other options here, but generally just trying to focus on navigation right now. So again, those are kind of going back to test search. Those are the three kind of main batching mechanisms in the system. Assigning it to people, creating work lists, creating worksheets. Again, the test search screen is your primary screen when you're looking at, clearing out the to-do list, right? So what are all the tests in a certain area that are unfinalized, that I need to go either follow up on and make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks or things like that in the system. The final area that I wanted to touch on, just in the navigation section here before I move on to just actual resulting out, is the case coordinator. So I mentioned that slightly at the beginning. So the case coordinator is a single person at the accession level who is going to manage, who gets the final say. So you don't have to have a case coordinator in VetView. It is an optional thing that you can assign. You can assign them at any point in the life of the case. Typically, I've seen this used more for, say, pathology type cases, but it can be used even in the sections. Again, if you assign someone as or as a case coordinator, then what that does then is as the last test, so this has only got one test on this accession, one patient, one specimen here. When that test is finalized, again, instead of it going directly to the final status at the accession level and the report going out to the client immediately, it stops in the review status, waiting for the case coordinator to review it and then decide either they need follow-up testing or maybe it's ready to go and they're going to just send it out. Now they can do it directly from the accessioning screen here that I'm on. You can have the button that says finalize this and it would go out. Case coordinator can do it right here. There is a specific screen for case coordinators that I can go into and manage all the cases that are assigned to me. From here, I can see those. I can actually preview the reports directly from the screen. So if I just want to preview the report, send it out, I can do that. I can send preliminaries from here, and then obviously I can finalize it from here as well. So it just gives you a basic search screen here that I can look through. You can pick other people's names. And so if you have someone who's helping you manage your cases, or if you're like an intern or resident who may be working with a pathologist, they can obviously look for the pathologist name and find their cases there as well. There is a security privilege you can turn on or off if you want to make it so the case coordinator can be the only person to finalize it, or you can leave that more open and it's just their name on it, but anybody can finalize it. Remembering that finalizing a test, finalizing a session, everything is logged. So just because someone else finalized it doesn't mean that it's not going to log who did it, even if it was my name as case coordinator. So everything is logged in the system. So we know exactly who pressed the button and when they pressed it, even finalizing tests or finalizing a session. So that's why I want to kind of, that's the general overview of navigating through the system. Remember, you can right click on things, make multiple tabs here. But again, test search is the primary area where you're going to kind of do your case management when finding tests that need to be operated on, batching them up, assigning them out to people in the system. All right, so now what I want to do is jump on to kind of dive a little deeper in specifically into resulting tests, putting results in, what some of the options are around actually putting the data in the system and finalizing them out. So I'll start with the basic hand entering, you might say, the result manual entering here at the result level, and then we'll talk a little bit more about automation there with worksheets, and then in the last section we'll talk about with interfaces. All right, so jumping back over here. So first of all, I'm going to kind of start with more of a pathology style case, kind of looking at the word processing style data entry. So again, I've got a little biopsy here. So general navigation real quick, as we talked about. So again, I use the accession number, could use a specimen barcode to jump right to my case here. Over here on the right-hand side is what we call like the navigator. It's a tree view of the session, so you can see kind of ownership. This patient has this specimen, has this test. If I scroll down, you might see other tests that are on that same specimen there. So this becomes your navigator here. And when you click on the test itself, you'll see the result area. You see me click on that earlier here. And so I can also collapse this down if I want more space. And depending on the data type, you get different options. So for a biopsy, we've got it set up for rich text and plain text here. Or actually, all these are rich text. And so with the rich text specifically, when you first come into the test, it's in a read-only kind of state. So you can kind of, if you want to read through it, you can see that. It's a little easier to read there. You don't have to click in and out of little boxes to potentially find the data there. Now, if you want to edit, and this is specifically for rich text, you have to click the pencil icon, which will then put it in an editor box for you where you can actually edit those results. You can slide this little divider out. Now there is kind of a max size. At one point it won't go any bigger than that. However, with text entry, especially with this rich text box, there is an icon you can click here to maximize it and have it fill the entire screen. So if you are a pathologist or someone who's writing in more word processing, typing up findings or opinions and things like that, you might find this useful to expand that to fit the whole screen. With rich text, you do have formatting options, obviously. That's the whole concept with rich text. You can bold, italicize, do some basic colors if you want to highlight a word, things like that. And that will be propagated over to the report and sent out as well with all that formatting in the system. Now, also with pathology style cases here, there is also diagnoses. We talked a little bit about that before, but you may have on the standard diagnosis fields as well. You'll also find things like signature boxes. So again, as the different data types are in that view, we try to make the screen dynamically change to show you what kind of data we're expecting. Is it a number? Is it a small text? Is it a rich text for paragraphs? Things like that. But what I also want to show here is that each result has a status. And this is where going into preliminary reports comes in. So the test itself isn't marked preliminary. And since it's working, it's considered preliminary. But we don't show working results. So if I wanted, let's say I've done the histopathology in this example, and I want to make that available to the client to see, maybe I want to send them a preliminary report with my basic findings I've had so far. I would need to switch that to specifically say this is a preliminary result and save that. And then that point, if I hit the send preliminary button or the client were to go to the portal and pull their report, they would see this would be visible to them to read, but anything else would not be. Anything in a working status is not visible to them on the session report. When you're previewing the report, there is a little warning up here that internally, when you preview the report, we show you everything. So, for instance, my name here, it's showing in this report, even though it's still technically in a working status. Same thing's true here. If I were to put in a comment, and I'm just gonna put some gibberish in here real quick, and I just save it. I leave it working. When I preview the report internally, you will see the gibberish I typed in there because this is the internal previewer. And we try to tell you there's a warning here. If you want to see what the client's going to see, you can hit this little toggle button and it's going to hide that. And now this is what the client would see if you hit the send preliminary button or if they were to go onto the portal and pull their own report and view it through the portal. So again, we only show those preliminary or finalized tests and results in the system. Again, internal previewer though will show you everything so you can kind of see and preview the report before you finalize it. It's just something I wanted to highlight there because that is something that catches people up when they look at preliminaries or wanting to show clients data in a preliminary status. There's also the report format, and we covered this. And when you set up your test codes, you can set defaults for all this, and that's where all these defaults come in. The results themselves, the type of data to expect, the statuses, the report format, all that is defaulted in at the test setup stage. But you can alter that if you need to on the fly. For some reason, if you need to switch something from a paragraph style report to a value pair or a grid, those can be adjusted on the fly. Over here on the left-hand side, there's actually what we call a pancake menu or a three-dot menu, whatever you want to call it there, where you can even manipulate the results themselves. If you want to move something up or down, you want to insert in a custom result field, something that's not common, but you want to insert it in. You can also add in comments. I'll show you this. It's more important, used more likely in, say, clinical pathology, again, but you can add in result comments, delete results, show the history. So every version of the result is captured. So if you type in a little bit, hit save, type in a little bit more, hit save, go back in and delete a little bit, hit save. Every time you hit the save button, we are capturing a snapshot of that result at the time that you hit the save button. So those are captured in the system for auditing purposes or for, going back and checking something. All of those things are logged at every save button. Now on paragraph style or the big text boxes, plain text or rich text, we also have a feature called macros, where it allows you to, and these are things that can be customized per person, or you can do it per test. So you can decide if you want to make this macro available to everybody, or if this is just something that you use commonly and you want to create it as a macro here. But the way the macros work is it's tied to the given result. So you may have different macros for comments than you do for the, say, histopathology. So again, macros are result field specific, but the idea is it's a stamp. So I can come in here, let's say I want to add in this CDK macro. I can just stamp that in there. And then once it's been stamped in, I can then edit that in the system. Let's say I want to add a new macro. Maybe I've got a block of text I like and I want to keep it. It's just as easy as saying, okay, I want to copy that piece of information and I want to make a new macro, type that in there. I can give it a little name, whatever I want to call it there. And this is where you can decide, is this for just me or is this for everybody? We leave it more open, assuming everybody's working together in the system. The administrator can go in there and change that if it gets needs to be altered. But if it's just yours or for everybody, or also all tests or just this test. And what that means is that histopathology results might be used on many different test codes. It may be part of the biopsy, it might be part of the necropsy, might be part of a cytology. As you can see, it can be reused. And so if you say all tests, then it means anywhere that the histopathology result field is used, that macro would be available. If it's something that's specific to biopsies, then you would leave that off, and then that macro would only be visible for this particular test code on the histopathology result field. As you get play with it, you'll kind of see the value in some of those things there about making it available for everybody. and it can be used, like I said, in any rich text or plain text. So it doesn't have to be just pathology. You can make those be interpretation comments in bacteriology, or it can be interpretations or other comments that you commonly use in serology. It can be used in anywhere in the system, but it's tied to the type of data. So it's anything, it's a rich text or plain text box. That option is available there. Now, another one, just to kind of show you in contrast different options here, let's go to another test code here. Let's actually pull up like a bacteriology sensitivity. So, yeah. So again, navigator on the right-hand side here, I've got a culture. I click on my culture, I can see notes and stuff on the culture. This is an older test code I found that had some stuff in it already. Again, you can see the different types of data. This one's slightly different. I've got a value list where I'm going to just pick something in a value list. It's got, and this is a different type of text box here. This is what we call a single line of text versus a paragraph of text. You might have it in a different report format here. So there's a lot of different options there. One thing I want to show though is we do have the arrow keys work. So if I arrow down, you'll notice my cursor is hopping to all of the edit fields there. We have sometimes like so with signature boxes, it's common that I'm going to put my own name in there. And so we give you a little quick icon, select me button, pop mine in there. Or then maybe the add the date button, add now. So lots of places we have little icons here. Again, if you roll over your cursor, you'll find what that allows you to do. Again, we have the edit pencil because maybe I want to update or edit the interpretation for some reason. Maybe we want to sub it out for a different macro. You can do that as well. You'll notice that some of these things can be pre-defaulted in, again, based on setup. If that's a common interpretation you want on every test code, you can default that text in there so it's sitting there for you when you open the test itself to be resulted out. Now, the pattern itself, so we're talking about sensitivity patterns. So I've got an isolate here where we've isolated out a particular bacteria. You'll notice the blue text there. We call that the test label. It makes it show up in the navigator here. It's also when you go to report it out, it's the key piece of information. It's the bacteria itself that you're doing the sensitivity on. But you'll notice in the navigator here, the pattern has its own row. It's got its own little icon. And when you click on that, you'll actually get to your bacteriology pattern result itself, where you can add in your SRI, MIC ranges, things like that in the system. This particular sensitivity, if you're still doing it by hand, we give you a couple quick actions to result them out. You can either click on the radio button for SRI or NI, no interpretation, and you can actually just select them down this way. Or one of the old ways or older ways that was in the system already is you can use the number system in correlation. So one is S, two is R, three is I, and four is NI. And you can actually just click the number here and it'll automatically advance down for you. And it's just selecting the radio button for you as you go down the list. And so if you are hand entering them, you can do that. Now, a lot of these are now interfaceable to, say, the Gills Biomech or the Sensititer or the Mila system, the HiQ system. I think it's called the HiQ Sensititer. Anyways, there's one called the Mila as well. And so you don't have to hand enter these in there. And that's really what a lot of people are moving to just because there's a lot of potential for error here. But if you still need to manually enter it, or if you need to make adjustments here, you click on that navigator here on the right-hand side, you'll find your pattern. You can save that. Even the pattern has statuses as well. So again, if you want to change the status and make that preliminary, or if you want to finalize out that particular pattern, you can do that. Again, if it's finalized, then it forces a user to unfinalize it before they can update results, kind of makes it read only there for them. You can also, with patterns, because the antibiotic pattern might change depending on the type of sample or the type of media you used, you can also update that pattern as well to the different ones you have set up in the system. You can also reset it if you're accidentally on the wrong one or you just want to clear it out. You can reset it out as well in the system. You do have to hit save if that's your final action there in the system. You will notice that as I've moved around a little bit, you've probably noticed that if I start to type information in here, the save button lights up and it won't let you leave without at least answering the question, do you want to discard or not? Giving you an option to say, yes, I want to save that before I leave, or no, I didn't mean to type anything in there, cancel and move on without saving my work. So we do have that option in there as well, or safeguard in there so that you're not accidentally overwriting or updating something you didn't mean to, or leaving and losing your data as well. The system does have in the background, and I don't have ability to kind of demo it right now, but you can also, if two people are working on the same result field, not test result, because if you're on different fields, it's not going to even care. As soon as you hit save, it'll update the information and there's no question. But let's say two people go in here and edit the same field in the system, it will automatically detect that. And when the second person tries to hit save, it's going to say, oh, there's a conflict. Someone else has already updated it, show you both versions, and let you decide, do you want to keep the other person's or do you want to keep my version in there? And you can choose which version wins, or you can copy it and update their version if it's something you want to, merge together. But the system will automatically detect that and prevent you from just overwriting someone else's data without you knowing it. All that is checked in the background for you in the system. Again, it's okay if you're on different result fields. It's only if you try to update the same result at the same time in the system that will automatically get detected and flag it for you when you try to hit save in the system. All right, and let me go over and I'm going to grab another type, just kind of showing you some other options here. Specifically, kind of on the CleanPath side, we have the diff counter and another type of field called result sets that I want to show you as well. So we try to support everything from the pathology, word processing style, all the way down to say more of your reference lab clinical pathology, hematologies, and things that are just run on equipment directly. We try to support all the different types there. I guess I need to be in hematology for a CBC. So on the CBC specifically, so again, we have the different result fields here. And Veview allows you to kind of mix and match, obviously, data types, right? So I have a text field that just has some information about it, but then you notice I have the different, numerical based results. Typically, this would be run on your, CBC machine, Bear Avia, something like that. That can be interfaced in, and it'll actually go out to the interface, come back. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the diff counter itself, it's something you set up at the test level, but if the diff counter is enabled for this test code, you'll notice there's a button up here and it's just built right in the system. Let's say I have 14.5 was my white blood count. Now I'm going to run in here and do my diff counts. And then get the little pop-up diff counter here so you can do the actual diff counter under the microscope. You're using the keypad as your diff counter itself. You can hand type them in if you're doing a diff outside of VetView, or you can use the diff counter to do that. When you get to the standard 100 count here, it will change colors. And also, if you have a speaker turned on, it actually beeps at you, letting you know you've reached your 100. We offer, all the way up to 400 counts there and you can replace or you can average them in. So if you are going to redo a diff, say you did 100 and you're going to do another 100, you can average those in, or you can replace that with the other diff there as well. You can also assign these buttons out. So based on the test setup, you can change the configuration here on what number key is assigned to it. There is options for a back out key, an undo key that you can put in here as well. So you can do that. It automatically does the nucleated red blood cells calculation. So let's say I'm doing a diff here. Oops, wrong button. I'm doing a diff. And I am getting nucleated blood red cells. When I get past the threshold, now threshold is what it's on the setup side, but once you get past it, it'll automatically do the adjustment there to your white blood count, letting you know it's there. And these absolute values are based on that updated white blood count, depending on how many you find. And when you do get to the end here, and you hit save, it's going to bring in your diff value. So it shows you absolute, it shows you the percentage as well. It'll do reference ranging off of that based on what you have set up for this species of animal. But you also notice it showed the calculation of the adjustment based on the nucleated red blood cells there automatically for you. So all that's built into the system. One of the other data types it's commonly used for the CBC is one we call result sets. So a lot of these different morphologies and stuff where you're describing, the cells you're seeing. If you click this icon here, you'll get a little keyword pop-up box that happens and lets you come in here and say, okay, maybe I had moderate ketones, and then I can come down here and say also I had select those, and you'll notice every time I click here, it's appending it to the list. So it's a multi-select concept that you can use. You can use it really in any test code. It's just commonly I've seen it here on the CBC as well. But again, anywhere you want to do a comma separated multi-select type of data. You can set that up with what we call a result set. It's part of the value list system in there. The difference between the result set and a value list, even though they're set up very similarly, is a value list is a single select. As you were saying earlier here, on some of the other test codes I had, let's go back over here. In contrast, like on the culture here, um, this is, where is it at? Oh, yeah, this is a value list. It's a single select. So they're set up very similarly, but again, this one I can only pick one item in the list. The result set, it's also under the value list setup there, as we mentioned, I think in a previous session, but it's designed for multi-select. So I can, keep clicking on different ones, filling it in. Also in that, you have the option to say replace or append. Again, obviously append to the default. It'll keep adding it to whatever you're selecting there in the system. On the text entry side of things, so seeing all these small boxes, the rich text boxes, any of the other plain text boxes like this one, there is no character count limits. You can put as much as you want in there. It is an unlimited text size field that you can use. Again, however you need to use that for pathology of those. There's not like a 4,000 character limit or anything like that, which are sometimes some of the database limits in the system. VetView stores it as a block of text that can be unlimited size. All right. Yeah, so kind of covered most of them there. There are several others that I didn't really cover, like images. Let's talk about that one real quick. Let me go back to my pathology case here. Um, I'm gonna add a new, let's see, to search. I had one the other day. So also, if you want to include images or attachments in the system, that's another thing we can option that you can put in there. And as you see here, we try to make it as intuitive as possible. So we're putting that in there. There's just an upload button. All images need to be on your local computer, though. It does not reach out to another site or another system. So if you've captured a key image from somewhere, if you got a microscope camera, or maybe you've pulled it off some other system, you can do those. Those are just key images there. If you need to attach things to VetView, you can do that as well. And that's actually one of the later sections one of the other sections I want to talk about is attachments. So if you have other images, or maybe you have scanned images of external reports, or maybe there's extra material that you want to send to the client, up here at the top, so we're on the session screen here where you can see all the information across the top here. Under documents, you can add anything you want here in the system. It's not limited to just images you can pull in, and we give you a way to kind of group them into different categories if you want to. But all you need to do is when you hit the attach button, it's going to navigate out to your desktop, allowing you to pick in something else in the system. Like I said, it can be PDFs, it can be Excel sheets. Now, just know that depending on what you pick, not everything can be faxed. If you're still having to fax or even email, you need to be careful that you're not attaching some, 10 gigabyte video of a necropsy, because that's going to most likely get rejected by your emailers in the system. But what you can do is, if you want to, one of the options we have is when you are uploading an item, you can say, well, make this viewable on the portal only. So maybe you do want to make the video available to the client, but you don't want it to be sent with the report, because it's going to go through email or go through a fax machine, and that's not going to work, obviously, but you want to make it viewable. So you do have those options there, that when you are attaching something to a case, the attach means it's going to go on the report itself. And so if I have this one selected and I preview it, we're actually going to have those things here right next to each other as an attachment there, and whatever you've named the attachment. If it's going by email, it would be an attachment to the email with the report. If it's on the portal, they'll see those and can preview those in real time. Or you can also not attach it to your report or the portal if you're using it just for internal documentation. So if you have worksheets and things that you are generating in the lab and you want to capture those and preserve those, you can attach those right in the VetView. You don't have to keep papers. We're trying to let you be a paperless lab in that sense that all those things can be absorbed in VetView, kept as part of the medical record of an accession itself there. All those things can be uploaded in the system. The images themselves are like inline images for reporting purposes. The attachments are riders to that. Um, so to answer your question, Carlos, it's not we don't merge PDFs together. It would be two separate PDFs on the email that goes to the client. So they are separate documents. All right. Um, before I jump over to interfaces where I talk about how you can automate some of this, let's talk about the worksheet and go back to it because there are some options on the worksheet that we built specifically for importing and exporting results. Um, and so going back over to the worksheet here, I'm going to pull up my canine respiratory. Let's go to the, oops. Yeah, that's fine. So with the when you build a worksheet, we give you a couple options when it comes to importing and exporting results. Um, Obviously, if you're doing an instrument interface, that's not what I'm talking about here. This is more of in the case where you have equipment or results that you're doing that aren't going through an electronic interface. And this is more of a manual interface. And the typical use case I use is like the Thermo Fisher, the Kingfishers, the Smart Cyclers. Those don't have true interfaces. We're still having to pass text files to the machine and then take a text file and bring it back to the VetView to absorb those results in there. There's not an actual interface that we can provide. And that's a limitation at the instrument level. They don't have a true interface built into their systems. They're still just exchanging those files. And so that's the main support we have is around the molecular. Now we have intentions to go further. We do have a small interface for IDEX, and IDEX can be used with this when you're talking about the X-check type ELISA plates in there. This is one of our active areas of development, trying to expand functionality to support other types of plate readers. The main ones we do are the Kingfisher or the Quant Studio, sorry, and the Smart Cyclers in the system. But to support the 96 well plate readers, we actually have an option in VetView. It's where you can actually create a plate, is what it's called, to let you lay out your 96 wells. So it's built into VetView that you can actually take a list of tests and you can lay out your plate. And the reason for that is if you do this step, if you actually go in here and lay out your plate, when we communicate over to Quant Studio, it actually can load the plate into the Quant Studio for you, picking the different we call protocols here. And so the idea is that in this is a whole session we could spend a couple hours on, and we can get more into detail later about this if it's something you're interested in. But in a nutshell, you can define different disease targets that you're doing on your Quant Studio or 7500. It does support multiplexing results and also and single targets as well. It also t ties into our control system, QC module as well. Again, we don't have time to go into all the details, but then in a nutshell, what this allows you to do is that you can quickly come in and say, okay, I am doing this particular multiplex. I can come in and create my negative controls and positive controls. And then based on my worksheet that I already have selected, I can then assign wells and it allows you to quickly come in here and drag these in of the protocol. Sorry, I'll do Bordetella here. And I can just double click those and add them down the list and lay them out, or I can just say add all tests potentially and build out your plates. And because we support not only multiplexing but multi-zones is what I call it, where you can say, okay, maybe the first three columns here are going to be for one target, and maybe I'm going to do a different target here. Let's say do Neo, and I'm going to come in and add my negative controls for Neo there. And then also, again, signing out wells to that. It will let you add the same specimen twice as long as it is a different protocol. If you try to add the same specimen twice and it's a different protocol or the same protocol, it will actually warn you and say you've already assigned that test to the plate. But the idea is once you build out your plate, you got your controls, you got your samples there, and on your plate, you can then generate the export file. So you can say, I'm going to the Quant Studio. You do have to add a default in case you didn't assign it in the system. It knows what to generate that as. And it'll actually create the CSV file that you would then take to the Quant Studio and use that to load up the Quant Studio or the 7500. And then from there, when you get the results from the Quant Studio, you can come back to this plate and now say import those results. You tell it again what your source was or your file format there. Pick your information. Let's see if I've got a sample one that I was playing with. Mm. And so when you import that back in, it will actually pull in the results from that file that comes off the Quant Studio or the 7500. It will log that against the well. It'll cross-reference the specimen ID, the well number, things like that, make sure it matches. If it does, then it will update those results automatically for you. And so we've got this, the plate layout and interface there. Again, this is our active development. We're looking at expanding this into some of the other types of plates and technologies, you might say, or types of testing in the future. But this is kind of the starting place here. Again, it does also do controls and record all this. There's a com log that lets you capture the imports and exports there. Again, trying to create a paperless environment that you don't have to try to keep those or track those outside of that view in the system as well. There is a basic importer as well. It's a little more like a wizard per se. On the basic worksheet, without building a plate at all, there is under the edit menu here, there is import a CSV file. The thing with this is you have to then tell it the mapping between the columns in the CSV file. What result is that going to? So you need to come in here and say, well, column one is for the Bordetella, column two might be to CDV. It doesn't have to be PCR. This one is a little bit more generic, but you have to kind of walk through and tell it the type of file, tab or comma separated, which one has your specimen ID in it, and then what are the other results that you want to import in the system. So it's a little more generic importer there for importing into the system as well in that sense. Um, so, and that ties in again, then once you get everything imported in there, you can review it, finalize it, and you're off and complete it. So that's one thing on the worksheet. We have additional interfacing there as well. Now the third kind of area, well, before I jump in, on the attachments, one area I forgot to mention is notes. So when you're doing resulting out, there are times when you need to add comments or attach things as notes or make notes of what a client might say, things like that. So for some of the test codes, almost all of them, you might have a result field that has a comment box already built into it. So kind of going back to, um, and go back to my pathology case I was playing with here, a lot of test codes, especially ones that you may have comments, you can build in a result called comments and have it there for you automatically. But in other cases, specifically around some of these like CBC or PCR type tests, where you want to make a comment specifically on a single result. Maybe there's something about the red blood cells that you want to note or make a comment on. That's where you can use this menu, and that's where the result comment comes in. You can actually just click on that, get a comment field here, fill in whatever your comment is. You can actually click edit and get a bigger box there if you need a bigger box. You can delete that. You can use macros. All those things are provided as well. And the difference there is that now this comment is going to be in line with the result itself. So when you preview this and save it, preview it, those things now that comment will come out on your report as well and be listed and shown with the red blood count. And you can add as many of those as you want to. So if you need to note this one here, you can do that as well. So that's a result comment, which may be different than a result field called comment in the system. So that's if you want to add it to the report or want to put it in line with your results. You can also, under the accession log, you can add just generic comments or here in the system of, either there was an issue with the test or something that you want to note internally. And this is all internally. It's not going to go on the report. But you can also flag it as an alert if you have something that you want to kind of alert other people to. about this test. If something, was bad or whatever whatever the text might be that you want put there. If you flag it as an alert, it actually shows up here automatically. So anybody who comes into this session hopefully gets their attention drawn to that there's some other kind of alert there. But again, the alert, you can have as many of these as you want. They don't have to all be alerts. You can just generate general comments. Clients can also have comments on there. So you can see like this client has a comment on their client record. So you can add comments to sessions. You can add comments or comments and alerts to sessions or clients for you to kind of track that information and hopefully alert people or notify people of things or record conversations you had with clients around a case. And then in combination with that, you also have your document tab where you can attach anything you want to attach there. Now, that being said, let's jump over to the third section for today, which is on actual interfacing and electronically getting things back and forth from equipment. Obviously, that's where we want to go. That's going to be the most efficient, cut down on errors, things like that. So the first thing is talk about is instrument interfacing itself. So in that view, going back over here. There's a whole section. Now, you will need to get your administrator to help you set this up. There's a section here called Jobs and Interfaces. And in the Jobs and Interfaces, this is where you can define, and there's a number of these that we provide automatically for you. If there are things, and several clients have also talked about new instruments they need built or added, we do that as well. Um, but this is where you set that up, the initial setup happens. We need to know where the instrument lives. How do we talk to it? Each instrument may have different capabilities. So for instance, like this Mila, it's a bacteriology machine. When you go into it, we can only read from the Mila right now. We can't send anything down to it. So there's not a communication. It actually sends its results through a mechanism called FTP still. So you just set up that additional settings there, and then you can see things coming in from that. It'll populate based on finding your barcodes. And this is, we're going back to what I mentioned earlier, is that having the specimen barcode is very important because the session barcode doesn't give us enough information if you had more than one test on it. So if you had two cultures on the same accession or two patterns, in this case with the Mila or the Biomic, the accession label isn't enough, right? We need to know exactly which sensitivity pattern you are reading from that machine, and so that's where having the right barcodes are important there on in the interface. Um, Let's talk specifically around data innovations. So data innovations is one of the primary ones that we've supported for a long time. It is a hub and spoke system. And what I mean by that is we talk to data innovations, and then data innovations brokers that out to different equipment for you. And they have that's their whole business model. They have a whole library of different instruments that they can talk to and kind of interact for us. And they standardize all the data back and then send it back to VetView for us to read in. And to show you kind of a working system here of what that looks like, pull up this system. So this is a live system you're looking at here. And whenever you're setting up one of these jobs, you'll notice it has a little, kind of a play button, noticing when the job is active and it's reading and writing information. But there is a log as well. And again, this is more meant for your IT professionals who are administrators who are helping you manage these interfaces. Most of these interfaces run in the background. You never really need to interact with them. But they are in case you have a problem where you can go and kind of find information around what was sent, was there a problem or not in the system. So in this particular interface, what we show in the log here, there's an outgoing and an incoming log. And this is what the data looks like. It's kind of the nuts and bolts behind the scenes. So with data innovations, we send down to data innovation. So it's a bidirectional interface. So as we send, this particular one is the EDTA. It's going to, looks like the Beravia, send down like a hematology type information. So we're sending that down through data innovations. It would actually show up on the Beravia. They would be able to scan the specimen barcode on the machine, and it would then be able to pull up the information. So that's, again, you'll notice it's kind of embedded in here. That's where that S number or specimen number is important because that's what we're sending down to the machine. That's the barcode you'd want to scan. And then once that data is completed, it's going to then come back to VetView on this incoming side And then that's where we get our results. Again, they're going to pass that same S number back to us with now given results. So this is a particular result here, 19.3, and that would then be absorbed in the vet view based on the different codes and names that are going back and forth. Now, if you are using data innovations, a couple of things I'd like to point out is that in all interfaces, you have to map what the machine calls it to what VetView calls it. And a lot of that starts, we talked a touch on it on our session on test setup, but those that may be managing it in the test setup itself, I would recommend that you put that mapping in VetView. Don't put it in Data Innovations because there is a place in Data Innovations to do it, but it gets confusing if you start mapping in multiple places at the same time. So what I would recommend if you are using Data Innovations, I'm going to use the CPC as an example here. Um, if you were setting up that interface to Data Innovations, I'm sorry, it's under here. All you need to do is at test level say, yep, you want to send that down. And it's actually at the result level where you are putting, pull up the eosinophil, not that one, it'd be the white blood cells, red blood cells here, one of these. Here is where we have the codes that the machine knows it as here. And that's where I would, again, what I'm trying to highlight here is that put the code, the mapping in VetView. Again, like I said, in innovations, you can do that, but then it gets really confusing if you're trying to track through the third-party data innovations that if you start manipulating data in their system, it gets even harder than try to track down the discrepancies that happen. Um, those that aren't familiar with data innovations, there are both a test code mapping and a fluid code mapping. A lot of those have auto learning modes you can turn on. That's what I kind of recommend you do. Again, just let it be a pass through in that system. There are tools, the communication trace and the specimen event log that will help you debug that if you need to. And again, we can help support that. We've been using it for a long time and can kind of help walk you through how to troubleshoot those. But as a rule of thumb, I like to do all the mapping in VetView if possible. And that's where going back to that test setup, wherever I had that, back here. Oh, no, back this way. In the interface section here, this is where we give you, if you say like you're doing Biomic, the same thing is true there. Biomic has its own kind of naming convention for drugs and different antibiotics or the drug names and things like that. You can build that into VetView directly, letting Data Innovations just call it what it wants to call it. We map it on our side. So for all the interfaces through instruments, that's kind of my recommendation is we put all that mapping in our system. All right. Now, the other interfacing style is when we're sending out electronic messages back out of the system. And this is more of, and we call electronic messaging. This is for your reportable diseases, typically like the Noun project. You're sending out your avian influenza, your CSF, those kind of things. There's also, we can talk to USA Herds, Global Vet Link, the Chronic Wasting Disease Program. Those things have to be turned on again in two places. One, it is back here, as I was mentioning earlier. Um, there is the job side of it, and there's always going to be a job side of it here. Again, it has to know where does that interface live, how often, how frequently do we talk to that interface? Do you need it more real time, or is it okay if it takes an hour or two for those results to get over to it? There also might be other setup there to make it work. But once you set this up, then when you go to your test setup side of things, you can now say, okay, yes, this is a global vet link. Enable that to work for this test code, or if it's an avian influenza noun project, you would come to that test code and then set that up for that single test. So there's the kind of the system level setup you do, and then there's the individual test setup you do that corresponds to that once you turn it on for that given test. And these tabs will automatically will dynamically show or hide based on which interfaces you currently work with. Now, to help manage those things not only at the test level, and let me show you what that kind of looks like at the test level when you're resulting one of those out. So let's look at one of the noun projects test codes here. So I'm going to go over real quick. Let me jump over here um, to search. Where test search go? So reset this. Surveillance, PCR, and on. And look at um, 'em. 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 ' So when you're doing something that has a external messaging here, what you're going to notice is in the bottom section of the result area, it will add the name of the interface here, and then also the status of the interface. So if it sent a message or not, and then if it did, what's the log that goes along with it. And so that's important whenever you're doing electronic messaging. We try to give you real-time feedback that A, we're communicating to that interface and what the status of that is as well. So you will see that here at the test level, but then also you'll see it at the system level. There is a disease reporting, sorry, a messaging log screen that lets you manage that at a system level. So you can come in here, you'll see the same names of diseases or reportables here, letting you then see those failures or positive, sent successfully in the system. So it gives you a way to manage it at a higher level as well. And so that's true for Global Vet Link, any of the external messaging ones. You can also see any fax or email that's leaving your system. Those get logged against the client and the accession, but also there's a global view of the emails and faxes that are leaving VetView. If there's a failure, you can actually resend things from here or reprocess them if they did not send electronically in the system. So this is a screen that lets you kind of manage those interfaces or view those interfaces at a higher level. All of the interfaces have also built into them, whichever ones you're setting up, they're all similar, is there is an error email address that you can provide that view. So if it has an error processing something, you can actually have it email somebody to give them the heads up. Hey, this failed, and they'll give a little bit of detail about why it failed. Is the interface down, or is there something not working anymore? And that way you can proactively know to go check something, see why it's failing or help potentially correct that problem in the system. So we have both those things, the per message events, and we have that screen that lets you then also manage that and view that at a higher level in the system too. Now, Global Vet Links is a specific one, and we're hoping to get more of these in the future. When things are coming in through the portal, or from the Global Vet Links, they're going to start out in the request area and then from there turn into accessions and then be resulted. So that's a specific one that I just kind of want to highlight here. We'll go into more detail on Wednesday when we start talking about accession creation here. But we do also, there are, just like instruments have a bidirectional, we also support a bidirectional with external sources as well, if that's an option. So we do that with USDA, the Noun project. We support that now. Global Vet Link as another one. And then obviously the portal, our VetView portal, can do that as well. They can be submitted online, creates the accession. When results are done, it goes right back to them, either electronically or by fax and email. So those are the different types of interfaces we have there. And the last one I will highlight today, talking about jobs and interfaces, and we were talking about attachments in the system. So attaching images and documentation, things like that. VetView also offers a automatic document attachment system. So it's a file uploader, we call it here. It's an interface you set up. It's on a job, so it runs in the background. But what this does, it allows you to create network folders in your environment where users can drop files that have the accession number as the first part of the name of the file. Or if you, a lot of people use this with submission forms, right? So submission form comes in, you can put the accession label across the top there, drop it in scanners. All of these scanners nowadays, there's software that goes with those that will read the barcode and automatically name the file for you, create a PDF out of it, and then you can have it drop it in one of these network folders, and then VetView will automatically monitors that network folder, finds the file, and uploads it and attaches it automatically in VetView. So you can define as many of these folders as you want. You can give them little common names. So maybe you're having grossing documents as an example here. You want to attach it to the accession. You give it a network path, like where is it living on your network? Again, your network administrators need to help you set this up. But then you can also have it automatically then say, okay, these are going to be grossing information. Let me have it drop it in the grossing section. I want to have this attached to the report by default or not. Make it viewable in the portal automatically or not. things like that. So you can have these different jobs set up to monitor the different folders. So you can just drop things in mass and have it automatically associated to the session without having to navigate to every single session one by one, attaching the different files in the system. So part of that interfacing and just helping you go paperless and also automating some of those mass tasks that you have in the system. All right. So I've kind of gone through the three sections there, went through kind of quickly. I will open for any questions anybody might have on any of the sections today. All right. Well, I appreciate your time today. Again, we will post this to the listserv. We'll put it up on our wiki. If you have any feedback, that'd be great. Someone unmuted. Do you have a question? Okay. Again, if someone was not able to watch the video or was not able to be here today, they can watch this video. And again, we will have more specific time with each of the different labs as they get ready to go live. But we just want to give you a kind of overview of the system when it comes to resulting out cases. Again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Mhm.